There's something incredibly satisfying about watching panic move through a room like a wave. And if you really think about it, that might be one of the secret engines behind Three's Company. The show wasn't just about misunderstandings. It was about how one tiny spark of confusion could spread from one character to the next until the entire apartment felt like it was vibrating with nervous energy. And one episode that captures this perfectly revolves around a simple situation that turns into a full-blown spiral of panic, all because nobody stops to breathe for 2 seconds. The story begins innocently enough, answers the phone and learns that Mister is planning a surprise inspection of the apartment. Not because they've done anything wrong, but because he's heard rumors from another tenant that something unusual might be going on upstairs. Now in the world of Three's Company, the phrase, something unusual, is practically gasoline near an open flame. The apartment already operates on a delicate social arrangement. Jack is pretending to be romantically uninterested in women so he can live with and under conservative expectations. So when hears that suspects unusual activity, she doesn't hear a routine check. She hears disaster. The panic starts with her. You can almost picture her face tightening, the polite smile fading as her imagination fills in all the worst-case scenarios. She hangs up the phone slowly, staring into space, notices immediately, and instead of calmly asking what's wrong, she jumps straight into alarm mode. Her voice rises, her eyes widen. She assumes someone is moving out, someone is getting arrested, or maybe the building is being sold. She doesn't know what's happening, but she knows it must be dramatic. And that right there is how panic spreads. Jack walks in at exactly the wrong moment. He sees the tension. He sees packing and whispering urgently. He doesn't ask for clarity. He assumes the worst. Maybe someone told about his latest date. Maybe a neighbor saw him holding hands in the hallway. Maybe the entire carefully maintained illusion is about to collapse. Within seconds, Jack is panicking about something that hasn't even been confirmed. This is where the comedy really begins to build. Nobody has all the information. Nobody is technically lying, but everyone is reacting as if the worst possible outcome is guaranteed. Tries to explain that it's just an inspection, but she adds a small detail about sounding serious. That word lands heavily. Jack hears serious and Imagine's eviction papers. Hears serious and Imagine's scandal. And instead of clarifying, they escalate. Jack starts packing now. He talks fast. He's analyzing every possible detail that could look suspicious. The kitchen, too messy. The bedroom, too cozy. The decorations, too feminine. He begins moving things around frantically. At one point, he grabs a throw pillow and debates whether it looks too comfortable. The panic is contagious, and John's physical performance turns it into a dance of nervous energy. He's picking things up, putting them down, adjusting them again. Tries to restore order, but her calm voice is undermined by her anxious body language. She keeps smoothing her skirt, glancing toward the door, checking the clock. Attempts to help by hiding random items that don't need hiding, which only creates more chaos. She shoves magazines under cushions and tucks away framed photos that look completely innocent. The misunderstanding grows worse when stops by briefly to confirm the time of the inspection. He doesn't say anything alarming. He just uses that slightly dramatic tone he always uses, the one that makes every sentence sound like an accusation. He raises an eyebrow, he squints slightly, and that's all it takes. Jack sees that eyebrow and immediately interprets it as suspicion. Leaves and the apartment erupts into even more frantic preparation. Jack begins rehearsing explanations out loud. He practices sounding casual. He tries lowering his voice. Then he tries raising it. He even attempts to act overly relaxed, which somehow looks more suspicious than panic. Every attempt to control the situation only reveals how out of control he feels. This is classic Three's Company timing. The show never rushes these reactions. It lets each character absorb the tension and then react in their own exaggerated way. There's a beautiful rhythm to it, tries logic, adds innocence. Jack adds theatrical panic. And it's Jack who drives most of the comedy because he reacts as if the world is ending. His imagination is always 3 steps ahead of reality. He sees consequences that don't exist yet, and in trying to prevent them, he creates more suspicious behavior. There's a scene where he decides the best way to appear natural is to sit calmly and read a cookbook. But the second mentions that might knock unexpectedly, Jack jumps up, knocks over a chair, and drops the book. The audience doesn't laugh because the situation is realistic. They laugh because it's relatable. We've all for something simple and made it worse. This contrast with is crucial here. Processes information internally. She worries, but she tries to think strategically, processes everything externally. She gasps. She whispers loudly. She announces her fears out loud. That dynamic keeps the panic bouncing back and forth. Ant's presence intensifies it without him even trying. He doesn't need to accuse anyone. His posture alone suggests suspicion. His dramatic pauses create tension. When he finally arrives for the inspection, the apartment is so overly arranged that it feels unnatural. Everything is spotless, but in a way that screams, "We're hiding something." The inspection itself becomes an reaction-based humor, touches random objects and looks around slowly. Jack follows him like a nervous shadow. If glances at a couch, Jack immediately explains why the couch exists. If looks at a framed photo, Jack begins an overly detailed backstory. He's reacting not to what says, but to what he thinks is thinking. That's how panic spreads. It's not the words, it's the reactions to imagined judgments. One of the funniest moments comes when comments casually on how comfortable the apartment feels. Jack freezes. The word comfortable echoes in his head as if it's a coded accusation. He launches into a defensive explanation about furniture arrangement and air circulation. Stares at him, confused because he meant nothing by it. This is where the cultural context matters. In the late 70s and early 80s, social norms were shifting. The idea of a man living with 2 women was edgy enough for comedy, but the show handled it with charm instead of controversy. Much of the humor came from that delicate balance between appearances and reality. Jack's fear of being judged by a traditional landlord reflects a broader anxiety of that era about reputation and perception. Three's Company became popular because it tapped into those social tensions while keeping everything light. It allowed viewers to laugh at situations that might otherwise feel uncomfortable, and the misunderstandings never felt mean-spirited. They felt human. As the inspection continues, the panic reaches its peak when accidentally reveals something that sounds suspicious out of context. She mentions how Jack loves being in the middle of us. She means physically, like sitting between them on the couch. But eyes widen, Jack's jaw drops, his face turns pale. The room goes silent. That silence is key. The show often lets silence do the heavy lifting. You see the realization pass from one character to the next. Jack reacts first, frantically clarifying, jumps in with logic, tries to correct herself but ends up making it worse. The reactions overlap, the explanations collide, and grows more confused by the second. What's brilliant is that never actually accuses them of anything serious. Most of the chaos exists inside the apartment before he even arrives. The panic spreads because they expect judgment. They assume the worst. And in trying to avoid suspicion, they create suspicious behavior. By the end of the episode, it turns out the inspection was routine, was simply responding to a minor maintenance concern. The dramatic tension dissolves instantly. Jack slumps into relief, exhales deeply, laughs nervously. And the audience laughs because we recognize the pattern. Panic is contagious. It doesn't need facts. It feeds on reactions. This is why the comedy still works today. Even though modern audiences might not relate to the exact living arrangement tension, the emotional dynamic is universal. We still tone. We still imagine criticism where there isn't any. We still react to other people's anxiety as if it's evidence of danger. Watching Jack spiral because he thinks suspects something reminds us of every time we've overreacted to a harmless comment. It's funny because it's familiar. Three's Company thrived on these escalating reaction chains. One raised eyebrow leads to defensive explanations. One vague comment leads to dramatic assumptions. The humor isn't in the original situation. It's in how the characters respond. And honestly, that's why I think this show has aged so well. The clothes and decor might feel retro, but the emotional reactions are timeless. Panic spreading through a room is something we see in workplaces, families, friendships, everywhere. If you go back and watch this episode, pay attention not just to what's said, but to the pauses, the glances, the shifting body language. Watch how one character's nervousness infects the others. That's the heartbeat of the comedy. And that's what makes Three's Company such a joy to revisit. It's not just about misunderstandings. It's about how we misunderstand ourselves and each other in the most exaggerated, lovable way possible.